What if the real monster in the terror, devil in silver, isn't the bison-headed creature at all? What if the hospital itself is the monster? Because episode 2 just turned New Hyde from a creepy psychiatric facility into full-on nightmare fuel. And honestly, Pepper may already be losing the battle. So today, we're breaking down everything from episode 2. The mystery of Anthony, the terrifying marks on Pepper's body, the hidden meaning behind Dory's buffalo speech, and of course, that absolutely insane ending with the monster attack.
You'll never find them. New Hyde won't let you go.
Pepper is starting to realize there's no escape. The episode opens with Pepper still obsessing over those missing keys, and honestly, can you blame him? At this point, New Hyde feels less like a hospital and more like a prison where reality itself is breaking apart. Pepper knows he saw the keys before he blacked out in episode 1, and now he's convinced that if he can just find them, he can escape. But here's the scary part. Escape might not even be possible anymore. And episode 2 keeps hammering that idea into our heads over and over again. Because every patient in this place seems trapped in their own way. Some physically, some mentally, and some spiritually. And Pepper still hasn't realized the worst part yet. New Hyde doesn't just keep people inside the building, it slowly breaks them until they stop wanting to leave. That's honestly terrifying. One of the most interesting characters in this episode is Coffee, because at first, he seems almost funny. He genuinely believes he can expose New Hyde by calling government officials, the mayor, the councilman, even the president of the United States. And Pepper almost laughs at him because, yeah, it sounds ridiculous. But here's the crazy part. Coffee still has hope. That's what makes him different from everybody else. Most of the patients have already accepted that they're trapped. They've adjusted to the nightmare. Coffee hasn't. He still believes somebody out there will listen, somebody will save them. Pepper, meanwhile, only wants to save himself. And episode 2 makes that painfully clear.
Put your hands on my grandma again! I dare you!
Marisol's visit changes everything. Then we get one of the biggest emotional moments of the episode. Marisol visits Pepper, and for a second, Pepper genuinely thinks this is his way out. You can actually feel the relief on his face, like suddenly the nightmare is over. Except, it's not. Marisol explains that she's been trying to help him this whole time, especially by convincing Ivan not to press charges. And that tells us something important. Pepper probably doesn't fully understand how much damage his actions caused outside the hospital. But then the conversation gets awkward really fast, because instead of asking Marisol how she's doing, or how Isabel is doing, Pepper immediately asks about his drum kit. And that tiny moment tells us everything about who he is as a person. Marisol is out there struggling to hold life together. While Pepper's worried about his instruments, he's not some evil villain. He's just emotionally immature and deeply self-centered. And then comes the huge reveal. Anthony, apparently Pepper has a son, and Marisol had absolutely no idea. That changes everything we thought we knew about him. Suddenly there's this entire hidden life. A dead ex named Antoinette, a son searching for his father. Years of abandonment and unresolved trauma. And now Anthony is coming to New Hyde. This could go in so many different directions. Maybe Anthony desperately wants a relationship with his father. Maybe he grew up wondering why Pepper abandoned him. Or maybe he absolutely hates him. Because think about this from Anthony's perspective. Your mother dies, you go looking for your father, and you discover he's locked inside a terrifying psychiatric institution after assault charges. That's not exactly the reunion anybody dreams about. What makes this even more interesting is how scared Pepper becomes after learning Anthony knows where he is. Pepper doesn't want his son seeing him weak, restrained, powerless, which tells us Pepper probably imagined reconnecting someday under better circumstances. But now Anthony is going to meet the absolute worst version of him. And honestly, Pepper deserves some of that discomfort. Because this episode keeps asking one major question. Can Pepper actually change? Or is he doomed to keep hurting the people around him forever? The marks on Pepper's body are terrifying. Now let's talk about one of the creepiest moments in the episode. The marks on Pepper's body. After Pepper gets restrained to the bed, he sees these monstrous hands reaching down from the ceiling. And at first, you could maybe explain it away as hallucinations caused by the medication. Except for one thing, the marks are real. And that changes everything because suddenly the supernatural element becomes impossible to ignore. And then Pepper notices something even more disturbing. Other patients have the exact same marks on their bodies. That detail is huge because it means this has been happening for a long time. Multiple patients have experienced whatever this thing is. And the staff, they either know about it or they're deliberately choosing not to ask questions. That's what makes New Hyde so disturbing. The horror isn't only the monster, it's the system surrounding it. Nurses like Scotch Tape and Josephine feel trapped too. They need money. They need jobs, so they follow orders even when something deeply wrong is happening. It's like watching people work inside a haunted house while pretending everything is normal because they need the paycheck. And honestly, that's scarier than ghosts sometimes. Then we get the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest discussion scene, which is honestly brilliant writing, because the patients immediately compare Pepper to McMurphy, and they're right. Like McMurphy, Pepper is loud, disruptive, resistant. He refuses to completely submit to institutional control. But there's one major difference. McMurphy fought for other people too. Pepper still mostly fights for himself, and that difference matters a lot.
Across the country, the American buffalo met.
Dory knows more than she's saying. Now let's talk about Dory, because wow, this character suddenly became way more important. At first she seemed quirky and harmless in episode 1, but episode 2 makes her feel deeply mysterious. Not only does she somehow find the missing keys, she almost seems to understand how New Hyde works better than everyone else. And then she tells that story about the American buffalo. This scene is loaded with symbolism. Dory explains how buffalo were driven off cliffs during westward expansion, trapped, cornered, forced into destruction, and she compares the patience of New Hyde to those buffalo. That's incredibly dark, because in Dory's mind, New Hyde isn't a place for healing, it's a slaughterhouse, a system designed to slowly destroy vulnerable people. And here's the saddest part. Dory no longer believes escape is possible. That's why she steals cookies instead. Tiny victories, tiny moments of happiness, because she thinks that's all they're allowed to have anymore. Honestly, that might be the most depressing scene in the episode, because you realize Dory has adapted to hopelessness. Pepper hasn't. And that's exactly why she tests him with the keys. She gives Pepper a choice. Help Josephine by returning the keys, or keep them for himself and continue chasing escape. And once again, Pepper chooses himself. That decision feels small on the surface, but it's actually massive character development, because it proves Pepper still prioritizes survival over morality. And then Dory says something chilling, "You're a better candidate than I thought." Better candidate for what? That line changes everything, because now it sounds like patients are being selected for something, and suddenly the monster attacks don't feel random anymore? Maybe the creature targets people who resist the institution? Maybe Dr. Walter is conducting experiments? Maybe New Hyde intentionally breaks patients psychologically before turning them into something else? The episode gives us just enough information to make every theory possible. Is the monster actually another patient? And then we get that ending. Oh my god, the final sequence feels like a nightmare you can't wake up from. Pepper hears Coffee screaming, the lights go out, the room turns into complete chaos, and then we finally see it, the bison-headed monster. This thing looks brutal, animalistic, massive, and the way it attacks, Pepper feels personal, almost like it's punishing him. Now symbolically, the buffalo imagery matters a lot. Remember Dory's story. The buffalo represented oppressed people being driven toward destruction. So if the monster has a buffalo head, maybe it represents the rage and suffering of everybody trapped inside New Hyde, like the institution literally created its own monster through cruelty and abuse. That would fit perfectly with the themes of the episode. But there's another possibility too. What if the monster is actually another patient? That forbidden room suddenly becomes extremely important. Dory mentioned Dr. Walter's son was hidden there. And at the end of the episode, Miss Chris and Scotch Tape drag somebody back into that room. Not Coffee. Somebody else, possibly the monster itself. So now we're left wondering, did Dr. Walter experiment on his own son? Is the monster supernatural? Or is it man-made? Or maybe, somehow, it's both. And honestly, that ambiguity is what makes this show work so well. It constantly keeps you questioning reality. Even Pepper doesn't fully know what's real anymore. Was the attack physical? Hallucinated? Symbolic? Well, those missing keys falling from Pepper's hands suggest the attack definitely happened in some form. And notice something important here. The monster tries dragging Pepper away, almost like it's trying to claim him, which raises another terrifying question. What happens to patients who stop resisting completely? Because New Hyde feels less like a hospital treating mental illness, and more like a machine transforming people into something else. And Pepper might be next. Our nerdy thoughts. What I love most about episode 2 is how it blends psychological horror with institutional horror. The monster is scary, sure, but the deeper fear comes from losing control over your own reality. Pepper can't trust the doctors. He can't trust the medication. He can't even trust his own mind anymore. And that's why every supernatural moment lands so hard emotionally, because underneath the horror, This story is really about helplessness, about systems swallowing vulnerable people whole, about guilt, isolation, and becoming trapped by your own worst traits. And Pepper still hasn't learned the lesson New Hyde keeps forcing in front of him. Survival alone isn't enough. If he keeps choosing himself over everyone else, he may survive physically, but he'll lose whatever humanity he has left. And honestly, that might already be happening. So yeah, episode 2 massively escalated the mystery. We've got Anthony on the way, possible human experimentation, patients being candidates, hidden rooms, supernatural attacks, and a buffalo-headed monster that may symbolize centuries of violence and oppression. This show is seriously cooking right now, and I have a feeling episode 3 is finally going to reveal what Dr. Walter's really hiding inside New Hyde. But what do you guys think? Is the monster supernatural, or is it another patient transformed through experiments? And do you trust Dory, or do you think she's secretly working with the hospital? Drop your theories in the comments, because honestly, this mystery could go in 100 different directions. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more weekly coverage of the terror, Devil in Silver, because trust me, this season is only getting darker from here.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.